speaker from Prilep in Macedonia, from the Faculty of Economics. And please excuse my pronunciation of your name. I don't know whether it's Nicola or Nicola Dimeski. Can you just correct me on your name, please?
Nicola Dimeski.
Nicola Dimeski. So welcome. And today I believe you're going to be talking to us about e-learning versus traditional learning and students' recommendations on enhancing the online business English learning. So welcome to you, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is, hello everybody. My name is Nicola Dimeski. I teach business English, head Faculty of Economics in Prilep in Macedonia. I checked the weather in Florence this morning. It was sunny and warm. That's what it says on the application. So I really, it's unfortunate that I'm not there, and I'm gonna miss the Florence tour tonight. But hopefully next conference I will be able to join you all there. Now, as you said, Luisa, my research discusses the recommendations given by the students on improving the e-learning based on their experience. And although the changes and reforms in the education should be a gradual process and should be taken slowly, the restrictions imposed due to the COVID-19 pandemic rushed the higher education institutions everywhere in the world into the online teaching, mostly unprepared, which was the case here in Macedonia as well. And even though we live in technology era, technology in education, unfortunately, hasn't been implemented much in the Macedonian higher educational institutions. Therefore, there were many obstacles, and teachers and students had to adjust to the new environment quickly. So I believe that we've all been through this in the past semesters, and we understand the pain we had to go through. So at the end of last academic year, I decided to do a research on students' perception of the online learning process at the Faculty of Economics in Prilep, and gather their recommendations as well on how to improve the e-learning process based on their experience. The research focused on e-learning in fully online classes where the lecturer does not meet the students or does not interact with students face-to-face. In this setup, interaction was between them solely depends on technology through video conferencing, mostly using Google Classroom platform, Google Meet, and other online teaching apps. The reason I decided and the motivation that drove me to do the research was basically that despite the efforts that to bring the students back into the classroom, which eventually will happen, e-learning is here to stay. It's not going anywhere, and as Mario said in the opening speech, if we don't change, we become irrelevant. So this is what's going to happen to teaching as well. So I believe that the educational system should transform and implement technology into the teaching and learning process as much as possible. On the other hand, there hasn't been much research on e-learning for the Macedonian educational institutions. Therefore, I believe and I hope that this research shall also help the teaching staff in the country as well. So I'll do a little literature review as well on what was the other researchers have researched on the topic, and discuss the methods and the data analysis as well. And finally, we'll do some conclusion and recommendations on the paper. Basically, what I did is I did an extensive research that included three main research questions. The first was, what is the perception of the business English students on the online teaching process at the Faculty of Economics Prilep? Then the second one was, is there any significant relationship between traditional learning and e-learning based on gender? And the third one was, what are the students' recommendations on enhancing the e-learning process at the Faculty of at the Macedonian higher education institutions? Now, The first two research questions were covered in a separate research paper, and this paper basically that I'm presenting today answers the third research question. What are the students' recommendations on enhancing the e-learning process? The answer hopefully will give questions. The answer to the question will hopefully help and will be important not only to the teaching staff in order to improve their online teaching techniques, but also to the faculty management in establishing the factors they need to drop or integrate to remain effective in educating the students from business English. As I mentioned earlier, there hasn't been much research on the topic for the Macedonian education, but there are numerous research papers on students' perspectives and suggestions on the quality of learning, and scholars and experts in the educational and technological sectors have addressed this issue from different perspectives. So some, like Cable and Chong, defined 8 principles of effective online teaching that students and teachers must follow. So they started from the point of view of effectiveness of online teachings. Others have focused on the differences and the advantages and disadvantages of one over the other, like Razit and others who focus on the advantages of traditional learning. And they argue that in traditional learning there is a high level of student engagement between teachers and students. Some research have based their arguments on the quality and effectiveness of the learning technology, like the research from Drew and others that discuss the use of mobile app in university lectures. It was interesting to find that students found the use of app for lecturing as unfitting, uncomfortable, and unacademic. And this was in 2018, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. On the other hand, there was a research in South Korea as well by Lange in 2020 that was based on improving online video lectures. The research not only determined the issues that students face during the video lectures, but also provided solutions and guidelines for instructors on how to improve the learning experience from their students. Other studies, like the one from Farrell, also discussed and analyzed the psychological and structural factors that affect online student engagement. And in this regard, Cleveland and I's research discussed the emotional presence within the online community and argues that emotions must be considered as an influential part of learning. Maybe finally we can also include or mention the research by Sun and others that basically defined 7 critical factors influencing e-learners' satisfaction, among which course quality was the most important concern by the online learners, followed by diversity of assessment and course flexibility. So these were all important for me since, as I said, there wasn't much research for the Macedonian higher education institution. So this is where I started when making the questionnaire for the student. So the methods, basically a quantitative descriptive design is used to study students' perspectives on e-learning and traditional learning. And based on students' responses, the study proposed the suggestions that can be implemented in order to improve the online learning for business and economics students. Participants in the study were 45 students from the Business English course at the Faculty of Economics in Prilep, who were undertaking their studies online and had previously been involved in traditional learning at the same institutions. So they could compare the two methods. A questionnaire was used as a data collection tool, and the 5-point Likert scale was used, ranged from 1, strongly disagree, to 5, strongly agree, to answer the questions. So basically, as I mentioned, this was a larger research and included 6 parts. It included the study materials. It included research on the study materials, also the motivational factors for the students, the effectiveness, skills development, comparing the two models, and the challenges. Finally, of course, there are suggestions and recommendations. And they had to also, and they could also write their recommendations using notes regarding how to improve the whole process. I know even though the paper focuses mostly, as I said, on the suggestions, I'll go through the other points briefly, just because they're very important, and there are aspects that connect to the suggestions at the end. As I mentioned earlier, the participants, basically the whole paper and the whole research showed that the participants had a different position on traditional and e-learning. However, it was clear that most students preferred traditional learning instead of e-learning, and this was despite the easy access to the e-learning materials and the adequate infrastructure that the university provided. In addition to the study materials, in regards to the motivation, most of the students also preferred traditional learning, which contradicts some of the studies, but it aligns with others. But it's also to mention here that it is clear that the students, as we can see in the second question, they are more than 70% of them are oppose the idea of replacing face-to-face learning with e-learning. Then, in terms of effectiveness, again, students pointed out that it was easier to achieve the learning objectives of the course in traditional learning classes than in online learning classes. This was the case with the skills development as well. Students based on their answers much easily achieved their skills in traditional learning compared to online learning. However, even though most prefer traditional learning methods, they were convinced that, as we can see here in terms of effectiveness, question 3, though they were convinced that the e-learning approach could be used as teaching method as a teaching method for business English. So let me just go. The students were also aware of the challenges, and not only the technical challenges with the professors, and as they mentioned, the preparedness of the teaching staff with using technology, but also they were convinced that e-learning approach could be used as a teaching method. They were not only convinced that the e-learning method could be used with teaching English online, but also they were focused on the challenges as well, including having group discussions, for example, as we can see with the first question here. Even though such discussions could be performed online, it was much fun and productive when the students meet face to face. The participants also claimed that they experienced emotional barriers as well, such as boredom whenever their institutions use distance education as a learning method. So this was part of the challenges that also help us create a better online learning experience for the students as well. So if we let me just go finally to students' recommendations and the basic and the analysis that this particular research is focused on. Business English students had different opinions in enhancing e-learning, and they can all be implemented in teaching business online, and we should all consider all of them when teaching online. As we can see in the table presented here, about 46% of the students recommended e-learning should be visually simple. This student recommendation meant that the instructor should simply focus on conveying minimal information. We sometimes believe that the PowerPoint presentation should include a lot of information, but the students are opposed to this. Students believe that they need the key points only, and then we have the explanation as much as possible and talk to them about the key points as much as possible. Furthermore, it was easier for students to comprehend concepts if the information was presented in graphs or in tables, and then talk within these tables. On the same note, also the students recommended that the professors should use fonts and colors that are straightforward with the less or no stylistic elements. This was, even though sometimes we as instructors believe it will be more fun or interesting to put more styles or colors in presentations, this is not the case for the students. Such presentations distract the students, and they thought it would be beneficial to them if their instructors use simple fonts, as simple as possible during the e-learning sessions. Basically, they want to concentrate on the professor, not to be distracted by the presentations, by the fonts or colors in the presentation. Also, they want the professors to present the information in small chunks through applications and mobile devices for easy understanding. This is opposite to Drew's research, and where most of the students were opposed using mobile apps during their university lectures. Here we have a different opinion from the students. However, most of them were unwilling to use platforms such as Twitter badges and for e-learning. So this was another case here as well. Finally, it was also important to see that the students believe that it is essential for institutions to ensure that there are result-oriented assessments to examine the comprehension of the knowledge gained by students, and this aligns with the research by Sun and others, who found that diversity in assessment was a critical factor influencing e-learner satisfaction. So this point was also important for them. At the end of the questionnaire, students were asked to provide their comments on the topic, and as I said earlier, although they mostly believe that and argue that traditional learning is better than e-learning, they suggested that there is a great potential in blended learning. And one of the students would say that he believes that combined lessons would be better, or that there is a potential using online devices for doing homework or for doing some of the activities or projects that the students would have. So this was very important to see that still students believe that there is a hope and chance to accept e-learning into their studies. Some of the students also raised the question of the preparedness of the professors for online teaching, and they argued that not all courses are easy to learn through online teaching. Hence, one student claimed, let me quote the student: "I noticed some professors are handier with e-learning and computers compared to others, resulting in high gaps between levels of presenting." So this was interesting. And another student would say, "My experience that it really depends on the professor and the course as well. There are some professors good in online teaching, but some aren't able to present the topics well. Also, some courses such as math or accounting are more difficult to learn online." So this was interesting to see that this is not a case like these are the rules and all professors or all students should follow the rules. It really depends on the professor, on the technical ability of the professor, but also on the courses, the topics and the subjects as well. So I'll jump to conclusions and recommendations. Finally, the COVID-19 pandemic accelerated online teaching dramatically everywhere in the world, and thus presented the advantages but also the disadvantages in e-learning. This created the need for implementing effective e-learning in the Macedonian higher educational institutions. Learning institutions need to do a gradual and slow transition when changing the mode of teaching. This will encourage the students to feel that their classroom environment is not being taken away from them. This is very important. So the abrupt change from one mode of learning to another is likely to affect the students' performance and capability to cope with the new environment, which is obviously the case in the online teaching during the pandemics. Therefore, learning institutions can implement the two systems together, and blended learning is something that we should take a look into the future. We also propose that the instructors do not overlook any learning guidelines when using e-learning, and especially implement students' recommendations in their methods. The teaching. Another aspect is training the teachers for online teaching. According to students, is inevitable. This is inevitable for the teaching staff. So such training will not only prepare and educate the professors for the different teaching methods required for e-learning, but will also give them insights into motivational skills to stimulate and help students for the e-learning experience. The technology is changing, and it's advancing every day. Therefore, the teaching should also change as well, and follow this path of changes. I'll quote Mario again: "We either change or we're going to be forgotten and become irrelevant." And this is the key point that we as educators also need to do. Some of the questions earlier were whether we should start the change or wait for the governments or the educational institutions start the changes. If we start to drop the ball to everybody here, and this is your field and this is my field, we're not going to succeed. We all should start doing this as educators first, and then hopefully the governments and the educational institutions will follow us. Thank you very much. I hope I was in the time slot. Thank you.